Under the blood-orange sky of a dying world, Commander Rian Holt crouched among the ruins of an ancient city that once belonged to humanity. The air was thick with the metallic scent of ionized dust and the hum of faraway war machines. His armor, camouflaged to blend with the rubble, reflected no light. It was as if the shadows themselves had accepted him as one of their own. He adjusted the scope on his rifle, exhaled slowly, and checked his comm link. "Command, this is Holt. I have reached the perimeter. Target area confirmed." The voice that replied was cold, synthetic, stripped of humanity by decades of war. "Acknowledged, Commander. Eliminate the asset. Do not engage in communication. Do not deviate from protocol." He stared down at the data pad glowing faintly in his hand. The image of the target flickered. A young alien female, barely 20 standard cycles, with silver blue eyes and skin that emitted faint bioluminescence under stress. Her name was Lyra. The file said she carried a unique genetic pattern that allowed her body to adapt to radiation and atmospheric toxins. That adaptability, if replicated, could make her species unstoppable. Humanity couldn't risk it. Rian tightened his grip on the rifle. He had eliminated hundreds of targets over the years, soldiers, scientists, rebel leaders, but this one felt different. The intel mentioned she was non-combatant, hiding alone in the old ruins, probably waiting for extraction that would never come. Command had labeled her the biological weapon, a threat to be erased. He told himself that's all she was. Yet something in his gut disagreed. He moved silently through the cracked hallways of the fallen city, boots crunching over glass that had once been windows. Holographic signs flickered faintly in alien script, casting ghostly light across the debris. Every step brought him closer to her last known signal. His heart pounded in a rhythm that didn't match his breathing. It was too fast, too human. He paused at the entrance of an old cathedral, the kind his ancestors might have prayed in before they left Earth. The building had survived the bombings, though half the roof was missing, letting shafts of dim sunlight pour through the dust. In the center of the hall stood a small figure wrapped in tattered cloth, her silver hair glowing faintly in the gloom. She was kneeling beside a pool of still water, hands clasped as if in prayer. The light shimmered on her skin like liquid starlight. For a second, Rian forgot to breathe. This wasn't the monster described in his mission file. She looked lost, fragile, exhausted. A child of the enemy. He raised his rifle. The targeting scope locked on her heart. Command's voice echoed again in his helmet. "Commander Holt, confirm visual. You are authorized to execute." He steadied his hand, finger hovering over the trigger. But then she moved, slowly, cautiously, and turned her head toward him. He froze. She wasn't looking at the scope's reflection. She was looking directly into his eyes. Somehow she knew he was there. Her lips parted. The word she whispered came out soft, trembling, not in her language, but in his. "Please." It wasn't a scream. It wasn't defiance. It was a plea. One word that shattered the discipline he had built over a lifetime of orders. Memories crashed through his mind. His first day in the academy, the faces of the civilians he couldn't save during the siege of Orion, the hollow metal ceremonies that followed each campaign. All the justifications, the propaganda about preserving humanity, suddenly felt thin and small compared to the trembling voice of one terrified girl. "Command," he whispered, lowering his rifle slightly. "Target appears unarmed. Awaiting confirmation. Execute the mission, Commander. This is not a debate. She's not what you said she'd be. Do not disobey orders." He muted the channel. He moved closer, stepping into the light. She flinched but didn't run. Her wide eyes shimmered with a strange mix of fear and recognition, like she'd seen him before, perhaps in a vision or a nightmare. "You came," she said faintly, her voice melodic even through the static of his translator implant. "My father said the soldier would come." Rian hesitated. Her father? His mind raced. The intel hadn't mentioned any surviving members of her royal line. "Who was your father?" he asked quietly. "A scientist," she whispered. "He said the humans would send someone who still remembered mercy." Rian's breath caught. This wasn't random. He'd been chosen for this mission because of his clean record, his precision, his loyalty. But what if Command knew exactly what kind of man he was, and wanted to test whether he'd break? He scanned the area. There were no guards, no drones, no traps. Just her. Alone, vulnerable, waiting for a man sent to kill her. His rifle felt heavier with every passing second. "You shouldn't have stayed," he murmured. "They'll find you here." "I have nowhere else," she said. "My people are gone. Your kind destroyed the cities. The air burns our lungs. I was told to wait." "For what?" "For you." He looked away, trying to process the madness of it all. She reached out a trembling hand, touching the air between them. "Are you here to end it?" she asked softly. He swallowed hard. "That's what they sent me to do." Her hand dropped. "Then do it." Silence filled the cathedral. Dust drifted through the beams of light, glinting like tiny falling stars. Rian could have pulled the trigger. It would have been clean, silent, final. But instead, he lowered the rifle completely. His voice came out rough. "No." Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Because you're not the enemy," he said. "You're just the reason they keep fighting. But if you disobey, they'll hunt you. They already do." He stepped closer and offered her a ration pack from his belt. She stared at it like it was a forbidden relic. "Eat," he said quietly. "You'll need strength." When she finally reached for it, their hands brushed, human skin meeting luminous alien warmth. The contact sent a strange pulse through his arm, like static and heartbeat combined. Her bioluminescence flared for a second, then faded. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the distant hum of engines. His visor flickered with incoming alerts, multiple signals approaching. "Search drones," he cursed under his breath. "They found me." He turned to her, urgent now. "You have to move." "Where?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "There's an old bunker under this district. You can hide there. And you." He glanced at the sky, already seeing the faint glimmers of descending ships. "I'll draw them away. You'll die. Better me than you." He guided her toward a collapsed corridor that led underground. She hesitated at the entrance, looking back at him. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "Because someone has to start ending this war," he replied. She vanished into the darkness. The moment she was gone, Rian reactivated his comm. "Command. This is Holt. Target eliminated. Confirming kill. Transmission received. Proceed to extraction point." He cut the channel again and stared at the empty cathedral. Somewhere beneath his boots, the girl he was sent to kill was alive. For the first time in 10 years, he had no orders left to follow. Only a choice. The engines roared closer, shaking the walls. He raised his rifle toward the sound, not to fire, but to protect. The last light of sunset broke through the clouds, catching the edge of his visor. It reflected across the pool where she had knelt moments ago, scattering like shattered gold. For the first time, Rian felt something dangerous bloom inside his chest. "Hope," he whispered to the empty air. "You're safe now, Lyra. I'll make sure you stay that way." Then he stepped into the open, disappearing into the storm of ash and light, a lone soldier now fighting against his own kind for the life he was meant to take. And somewhere below, the alien girl waited in silence, unaware that the ghost above would become her unseen protector for years to come. The report went through without question. Command believed him. The moment the words left his mouth, target eliminated. His file was updated with the usual seal of completion, a medal's worth of death typed into a database that no one would ever read. Rian Holt stood in the cold wind of the ruined city, helmet under his arm, watching the extraction shuttle streak across the crimson horizon without him. He had given them coordinates far from the truth, coordinates to an empty shell of a battlefield. Somewhere below his feet, under layers of ash and time, Lyra was alive. And for the first time since he could remember, he wasn't sure which side of the war he stood on. He found her again at dawn. She had crawled out from the bunker, her clothes torn, her luminous skin dim with exhaustion. She looked smaller in the pale morning light. You came back, she said softly, half afraid it was an illusion. Rian dropped a ration pack beside her and nodded. You'll need these, he muttered. Stay here for now. The area's off the grid. No one will scan this far out. Lyra studied him quietly, her silver eyes searching his face as if trying to understand the shape of mercy. You told them I was dead? I told them the truth they wanted to hear. Her expression shifted. Fear, gratitude, disbelief, all tangled in one fragile heartbeat. Then what happens to you? I vanish. He gestured toward the ruins. And so do you. It was easier said than done. The next week was a blur of movement and silence. Rian mapped the area, activated old defense turrets, and scavenged supplies from what was left of a human outpost half buried in dust. It had once been a research facility before the war consumed it. Now it was a skeleton of steel and glass, cracked but standing. He sealed the lower levels, reinforced the entrances, and set up a motion perimeter. Lyra watched him work from a distance, curiosity glowing faintly in her eyes. She didn't speak much. When she did, it was in short, hesitant sentences, as though she was relearning how to use her voice after too much silence. At night, she would sit by the broken window overlooking the wasteland, tracing the constellations with her fingers. The stars fascinated her. Your people named them, she said one evening as he adjusted a damaged power cell nearby. Do you remember their names? He didn't answer. He remembered them all, the constellations he learned as a boy before the war, the stories behind them. But those stories belonged to a time when humanity still believed in beauty. He didn't want to taint them with the ashes of what remained. When he looked at her, though, something softened. Her glow was faint but steady, a reminder that life could still exist even in the ruins. He began to realize he wasn't protecting her out of guilt or rebellion anymore. He was protecting her because she represented something he'd forgotten, innocence, or maybe hope. Days turned into weeks. He built a shelter for her inside the lower labs, connecting old power conduits and filtering the air with salvage tech. She learned quickly, her alien physiology adapting to the human systems faster than expected. When she found an old terminal that still powered on, she spent hours exploring it. These are your histories, she said, eyes wide as she scrolled through fragments of archived data. Your songs, your art, your cities. Her voice trembled with wonder. They were beautiful. Rian didn't answer. He was standing behind her, watching the flickering holograms of Earth's oceans, forests, and crowded streets, the things that no longer existed. The light from the screen reflected in her silver eyes, and for a brief second, he saw both worlds overlapping, the lost beauty of humanity and the fragile grace of what had replaced it. He stayed close enough to protect her, but far enough to keep his presence uncertain. She never saw him eat, never saw him sleep. He would vanish for days, hunting supplies, sabotaging scanners, misleading human patrols when they came too close. To her, he became something between myth and memory, a guardian spirit haunting the ruins. Sometimes, she spoke into the dark, thinking she was alone. I know you're there, she whispered once, staring at the stars. I don't know who you are, but thank you. He listened from the shadows, unseen, unacknowledged, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had lived his entire life being seen by superiors and enemies alike, always defined by rank, by orders, by war. But now, in her quiet gratitude, he found something purer than any commendation. One night, while repairing the defense array outside, Rian detected movement on his scanner. Human patrol drones, 3 of them, sweeping the perimeter in standard recon formation. He cursed softly and activated the signal jammer he had built. The drone's sensors flickered and spun, confused, before flying off course. When he returned to the bunker, Lyra was standing by the doorway, eyes wide. Was that them? She asked. He nodded. They're looking for anyone who might have survived. They'll move on. Because of you, she said quietly. He shrugged. Because I'm good at hiding things. That night, she didn't go back to the archives. She sat near the fire he had built from salvaged heat coils. Do you ever wish the war ended differently? She asked. He looked at her across the dim light. Every day. Then why fight for them still? I don't know anymore, he admitted. Maybe because it's all I've ever done. And now, he hesitated. Now I'm trying to remember how not to. Lyra smiled faintly. The glow on her skin brightened for a moment, soft like moonlight. Then you're not like them, she said. He wanted to argue, to tell her how many lives he had taken, how much blood stained his hands. But the words caught in his throat. He only managed to quiet. You don't know me. I know enough, she replied. In the following months, the silence between them became its own language. He repaired the old communication tower so she could listen to intercepted broadcasts from both sides. Through them, she learned how humans described her kind, monsters, mutations, contagions, and how her kind, in return, called humans destroyers of worlds. We both see the other as the end, she murmured once, listening to a static-filled report. Maybe we're both right. Rian didn't disagree. He began keeping a small distance after that, moving his camp outside the bunker to avoid drawing attention. But every night, he still returned to the edge of the ruins, watching the faint glow from her window. He had never believed in prayer, not since the wars began, yet sometimes he found himself whispering silent words into the wind, words without form, but filled with hope that she would live long enough to see a sunrise without fear. The world around them remained cruel. Patrols grew more frequent. Command sent out new scanning drones. Rumors spread through encrypted channels about a missing commander, presumed dead. Rian erased traces of his existence wherever he could, burned records, scrambled coordinates, even destroyed an old ID beacon that once carried his name. Each piece of himself he erased made him less human in the eyes of his old world. But each day she lived, he felt more human than before. Lyra, unaware of the cost of her survival, continued to grow. Her bioluminescence stabilized. Her voice grew stronger. Sometimes, Rian caught her singing softly to herself, an ancient melody from her people that echoed hauntingly through the ruins. He would close his eyes, letting it wash over him like a memory from a life that never existed. And in that stillness, something unspoken formed between them, a pact neither of them declared but both understood. She would live quietly, and he would guard her in silence. He would remain unseen, a ghost in the shadows, and she would continue believing the night itself protected her. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something older, deeper, the fragile beginning of trust in a world that had forgotten what trust meant. When the wind howled through the broken towers and the stars blinked faintly through the dust, she sometimes whispered to the darkness, "Who are you?" And though he never answered, he always smiled faintly from his hiding place, whispering back into the storm where she couldn't hear, "I'm the man who refused to pull the trigger." The desert winds had grown crueler over the months. What was once silence had turned into a constant hum of engines in the distance, echoing through the skeletal remains of the dead city. Rian Holt crouched beside an old communication relay, its surface coated with a century's worth of dust and corrosion. He had intercepted the signal 3 hours ago, weak, fragmented, but undeniably alien. It was a distress beacon, repeating a single phrase over and over in a language half corrupted by interference. He didn't need a translator to understand what it meant. Someone from Lyra's kind was still alive. He stared at the coordinates flickering across his wrist display. The beacon originated only 80 clicks east of their hideout, near the irradiated plains that once served as a battlefield. That region was still under heavy human surveillance. Going there would mean exposure. Staying meant abandoning survivors and possibly the last of her people. Lyra didn't know yet. She sat inside the bunker, reading through fragments of human history he had salvaged from old data cores. Sometimes she asked questions he couldn't answer. Why humans burned their own worlds, why they feared things they didn't understand. He told her it was complicated, but it wasn't. It was just human. He looked at her through the cracked glass of the observation port. Her silver hair glowed faintly in the dim light, her fingers brushing over holograms of Earth's forests, oceans, and cities that no longer existed. She studied humanity with the same wonder a child might have for ghosts. They were so full of life, she whispered once. What happened to them? He had no answer then. He still didn't. Now, he faced a question even harder. Should he risk everything to help her kind, or protect the one life he'd already sworn to keep hidden? He powered down the relay and returned to the bunker. The entrance, masked by layers of debris, opened with a soft hiss as he entered. Lyra turned, smiling faintly when she saw him. "You're back." "Yeah." He set down his gear. "No trouble outside." "Good," she said, then hesitated. "You're lying." He froze. Her tone wasn't accusing, just certain. She'd grown perceptive, sharper each day, learning human cues faster than he'd expected. "Something's wrong," she continued softly. "I can feel it in the signals." He sighed, pulling off his gloves. "A transmission came through this morning. Alien frequency." Her eyes widened. "My people?" "Could be," he said carefully. "Could also be a trap." She stood up. "I have to answer it." "No," his voice came out sharper than he intended. "You can't risk it. If command detects alien communication, they'll come here with everything they have." "What if they're dying?" she pleaded. "What if they're the last ones left? Then they already know how to hide." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken truths. He saw the pain flicker across her face, the weight of loneliness pressing down like gravity. She turned away, her voice trembling. "You don't understand what it's like being the last." He stared at her, jaw tightening. "Yes, I do." That night, as she slept, he climbed the ridge overlooking the ruins, the horizon burning faintly from distant human patrol lights. He activated his scanner again, isolating the alien signal. It was faint but growing stronger. Someone or something was moving closer. He adjusted the receiver to triangulate its position, but before he could lock it, the signal spiked. Static erupted in his earpiece. He cursed softly, cutting the feed. The surge had been too deliberate, too sudden. Someone was trying to connect. Down below, the faint glow of the bunker lights flickered. He frowned and sprinted back. The moment he entered, he knew. Lyra stood by the terminal, her hands trembling over the interface, the old screen humming with alien symbols. The distress signal was now two-way. She had opened the link. "Lyra!" His voice cracked through the room. She turned, startled. I thought I could boost the frequency. Maybe send them a response." "Do you have any idea what you just did?" He slammed the controls, shutting the system down. "You just broadcast our location to every human satellite still listening." Her face went pale, her glow dimming with shame. "I didn't mean to." "It doesn't matter what you meant." He grabbed his helmet and checked his wrist display. "Command scanners will pick that up in minutes." Outside, the night began to hum. A faint droning, distant but rising. Drones. Patrol units. He knew that sound better than his own heartbeat. Lyra backed away. "They're coming." "Yes," he said tightly. "Get below. Now." She disappeared into the lower chamber while Rian raced to the entrance. He activated the old defense turrets he'd reprogrammed months ago. They sputtered, coughed, and came to life with mechanical groans. His HUD flickered with movement signatures closing fast from the northwest. 2 scout drones. Maybe 3. Command was efficient. They would send recon first, then soldiers. He aimed his rifle at the nearest shape gliding through the dust. The drone's lights swept across the ruins, scanning, analyzing. He held his breath. If they found the bunker entrance, it was over. The machine turned, hovering near the broken cathedral where he'd first met her. The sensors pulsed red, then froze. Rian fired once, clean and silent. The bullet pierced its optical core. It dropped like a stone. The others immediately shifted course. His visor filled with red warnings. "Damn it!" he muttered, sprinting through the debris. He threw an EMP grenade, watching it detonate midair, sending a ripple of blue light across the sky. The second drone shorted out, crashing into a column of stone. The third veered off but transmitted before dying. That one hurt the most. Command would know. He raced back to the bunker, heart pounding. Lyra stood in the corridor, clutching one of the data cores. "Did they see us?" "Maybe, maybe not. But they'll come looking." Her voice broke. "I just wanted to find them. I thought maybe. He grabbed her shoulders, not harshly, but firm enough that she looked at him. You can't save everyone. Not right now. The only way they survive is if you do. Tears welled in her eyes, shimmering like quicksilver. You think hiding forever will save me? No, he said. But it'll give us a chance to change what happens next. He let her go and began packing gear, supplies, weapons, rations. The bunker had been safe once, but not anymore. Command would send a team, maybe Mercer himself. He couldn't risk staying. As he loaded the last crate, his comm crackled to life. Commander Holt, a voice said. A voice he recognized instantly. Mercer. Calm, precise, and dangerous. We picked up some unusual readings near your last coordinates. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Rian's chest tightened. Negative. Probably residual energy from the bombardment. That's so. Mercer's tone was light, but there was suspicion buried underneath. Strange how it matches the same frequency from the old alien beacons. You didn't leave any unfinished business out there, did you? Rian forced a steady breath. Mission was completed years ago. Of course it was, Mercer said smoothly. Still, humor me. I'll be stopping by that sector tomorrow. Wouldn't want to find any ghosts out there. The line went dead. Rian stood frozen, the static still ringing in his ear. He turned toward Lyra, who was watching him with wide eyes, reading the truth in his silence. They know, she whispered. Not yet, he said, his voice low. But they will. Outside, the sky burned faintly with approaching engines. Rian looked up, jaw clenched, and whispered to himself, then the ghost will have to stay ahead of the living. He shut down every light, every system, and guided Lyra through the back tunnels leading deeper into the ruins. As the world above filled with the mechanical cries of human patrols, he felt something inside him fracture. Not from fear, but from the knowledge that he was no longer part of the species he was born to protect. He had chosen his side, and that side was glowing softly in the dark beside him, clutching a fragment of humanity's history like it was worth saving. The dust storm had finally eased when Rian saw the faint glint of metal cutting through the horizon. Dropships, 3 of them, descending in formation. The Engine's echo crawled through the ruins like a heartbeat returning to a corpse. He hadn't seen human insignia that close in nearly a decade. The moment his visor recognized the Icarus unit emblem on the lead ship, Rian's stomach twisted. Captain Mercer, his old partner, his shadow. The man who had once sworn he could read Rian's thoughts even before he spoke. Rian ducked behind a broken satellite dish, lowering his field scanner. Lyra, he whispered through the hidden comm line he'd rigged beneath the ruins, his voice tight. Stay below ground. Don't make a sound. Understand. Her voice came back soft and unsteady, the one sound that had become his only thread of calm. The sky, it hums again. Are those your people? They're soldiers, he said. Not mine anymore. There was a silence, one she didn't understand. She had never known what that insignia meant, but Rian did. It meant scanners, drones, and hellfire, precision sweeps meant to flush out anything not on their approved life signature list. He shut down all his external sensors and activated the jammers. Minutes later, the first dropship landed a kilometer out, raising a rolling wave of sand that slapped against the decayed concrete of the outpost. Mercer emerged first, helmet off, gray at the temples but still carrying that same cocky half-smile that had once made Rian trust him with his life. Commander Holt, Mercer's voice crackled through the local channel, intentionally public. Never thought I'd find you babysitting ruins. You get tired of killing aliens? Or just the silence? Rian forced a dry chuckle. Orders are orders, Captain. Just running interference on border frequencies. Thought the brass forgot about this place. Funny, Mercer replied, his tone easy, but there was a weight behind it, because Command didn't. We've been auditing old mission reports. You know the one I mean, Operation Black Sunday. You reported target eliminated. Rian's pulse spiked. He kept his expression calm, watching through the broken window as Mercer's AI drone hovered beside him, scanning. A faint blue light washed over the rocks. I did, Rian said. Confirmed kill. 10 years ago. Mercer smirked faintly. That's the thing. We never found a body. Command's been running genetic residue comparisons. And guess what we picked up about a month ago? He tapped his wrist console. The drone projected a faint hologram. An echo of energy, humanoid, barely readable. But Rian recognized it instantly. Lyra. He forced his voice steady. Could be residual energy from the old archives. You know how alien tech leaks through the soil here? Yeah, maybe, Mercer said. Or maybe someone's been keeping a ghost alive. The words hung in the air, too casual to be innocent. Mercer turned his back, letting the drone drift closer. It beeped softly as it scanned the ground, and Rian realized it was heading straight for the concealed ventilation shaft that led to Lyra's chamber. He didn't think. He moved. Rian tossed a small EMP grenade into the dirt near the outpost's edge. The burst was silent, invisible, but its pulse ripped through the drone's sensors. The machine sputtered, lights dimming, and fell like a stunned insect. Mercer spun around, hand already on his sidearm. What the hell was that, Rian? Rian shrugged, lowering his rifle. Old mines. You remember what this place was built for? Half this ground is unstable. Mercer narrowed his eyes, stepping closer, boots crunching through the dust. You always were a bad liar. Rian met his gaze evenly. And you were always too curious for your own good. For a long moment, neither man spoke. The wind carried the soft hiss of shifting sand. Then Mercer's voice dropped, the soldier gone, the friend resurfacing. If there's something out here, Rian, you need to tell me now. Before command sends someone less patient. Rian didn't answer. His mind raced. Every sensor in his HUD screamed proximity warnings. The secondary drones were circling back, their scanners rebooting. He had seconds before they picked up the faint warmth from the underground shelter. Inside, Lyra had stopped breathing. She could feel the vibrations above. Footsteps, metallic wings, human voices. She clutched the old hollow crystal Rian had given her to distract her from fear, the one filled with ancient human lullabies. She didn't understand why her chest ached. Rian took one step toward Mercer. You find anything, you report it to command, right? Mercer frowned. That's how it works. Even if it's something that shouldn't exist? Mercer tilted his head, studying him. You're really making me wonder what the hell you buried out here. Rian smiled thinly. Let's hope you don't dig too deep. And then he moved. In a fluid motion, he raised his sidearm and fired, not at Mercer but at the remaining drones. The blast ripped through the air, scattering the machines into sparking debris. Alarms blared across the comms. Mercer dove for cover, shouting orders. Hold your fire. Halt! What the hell are you doing? Rian ignored him, activating the smoke beacons across the perimeter. The outpost filled with gray mist, thick enough to confuse thermal scans. Then he grabbed Mercer by the shoulder, slammed him behind a wall, and hissed, They're watching both of us, Mercer. This isn't a cleanup mission. They want to see who flinches first. Mercer's eyes widened just a fraction, but Rian saw something else flicker there. Doubt. Maybe even belief. Rian, what did you do? Rian looked away. Something human. He turned, sprinting through the haze toward the old access tunnel. The scanners were already rebooting. Lyra's chamber glowed faintly on his retinal map. He reached the hatch, slammed the override, and dropped into the shadows. Lyra stood there, eyes wide, skin pulsing with faint biolight. You said not to make a sound, she whispered. But I heard them. They sound like you. They're not me, Rian said, grabbing the emergency pack and slinging it over his shoulder. They'll sweep the ruins within minutes. We have to move. Her voice trembled. You lied to them, didn't you? He froze. For the first time, she looked at him not with fear, but with knowing. You told them I was gone, she said softly. You told them you killed me. Rian didn't answer. The sirens above screamed as searchlights pierced the dust. Lyra took a step forward, her hand trembling as it reached toward him. Why would you do that? Because you were just a child. Because you didn't deserve to die for what your people did. Because I couldn't. He didn't say any of it. He just grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the tunnel. Behind them, Mercer's voice boomed over the comms. Rian Holt, stand down. You're under arrest for insubordination. Rian didn't stop. He just whispered into the darkness. Welcome to the war, Lyra. And as they vanished into the tunnels below, Mercer's drone flickered back online, replaying its last visual capture. A brief, blurred glimpse of a glowing figure following Rian into the shadows. The feed transmitted automatically to command. Somewhere far above, a cold voice said, "Target reacquired." The desert stretched endless before them, a wasteland of broken metal bones and whispers of old wars. Rian had been running for 2 days, sleep-deprived, wounded, and carrying a pack filled with more guilt than supplies. Lyra trailed behind, her steps unsure, her luminous skin dimmed under a cloak of soot. The hum of pursuit drones haunted the wind. Every sound felt like a death sentence. By the third night, they found shelter in the remains of a collapsed comm relay. The old human structure, half buried in the sand, buzzed faintly with residual energy. It was a hollow shell, perfect for hiding, at least for a while. Rian was silent as he patched a gash across his arm. Lyra sat across from him, knees drawn up, watching the faint blood seep through the bandages. "Why do you do that?" she asked quietly. "Hurt yourself to stop hurting more?" He looked up at her, eyes hollow. "It's just how humans survive." She tilted her head, frowning. "Then it's a cruel way to live." He didn't answer. The truth was, he didn't know how to explain what survival meant to someone who had never been allowed to fight for her own life. He'd killed to live, lied to save, and now he was something neither human nor soldier, just a ghost keeping a secret that could destroy them both. He was about to respond when his wrist comm blinked red. A secure frequency. Mercer's frequency. Rian froze. The signal had been piggybacked on an encrypted code only their unit used. One Mercer had promised was for emergencies only. Against his better judgment, Rian accepted the transmission. The screen flickered to life, revealing Mercer's face under the hard glow of a military deck light. "You really did it," Mercer said, his voice low. "You really went rogue." Rian said nothing. Mercer leaned forward, eyes burning with something between betrayal and sorrow. "You didn't kill her, did you? You lied to command. You've been hiding her all this time." Rian didn't respond. The silence stretched. The way Mercer's face shifted, jaw tightening, breath faltering, told Rian that was answer enough. "You know what they'll do to you now?" Mercer continued. "You're already flagged as non-compliant. They've got your bio-ID locked. The second your name pings on any system, they'll send everything they've got after you. Drones, mechs, even orbital support if they think she's with you." Rian's voice came out like gravel. "Then I guess I'll make sure they never get close enough to try." Mercer slammed his fist on the console. "Damn it, Rian. You think this is noble? You think saving one alien girl redeems what we've done? She's the reason the war started." "She's not the reason," Rian said coldly. "She's the excuse." For a moment there was only static. Mercer's eyes softened just slightly, as if remembering something old and fragile. "You always had a death wish," he murmured. "Maybe this is how it ends." Then the feed cut. Rian stared at the blank screen for a long time. Then he smashed the comm into the wall, sparks scattering across the floor. Lyra flinched at the sound. "They'll come for us now," she whispered. "They already were," he muttered. "Now they'll come faster." That night, Rian stayed awake, listening to the wind scrape against the metal walls. His mind replayed Mercer's words. "You didn't kill her, did you?" Like an echo he couldn't bury. He'd thought his old friend might understand. Instead, Mercer had done what any good soldier would. He'd report it, and command would brand him what they always branded those who defied orders: a traitor. By dawn, the horizon burned red with the approach of dropships. Rian spotted them through the cracked visor of his helmet, tiny black dots swelling larger by the second. The hum of engines grew into a roar. "Pack your things," he said sharply. "We're moving." Lyra blinked sleep from her eyes. "Where will we go? There's nothing out here but death." Rian loaded his rifle. Then we'll hide in death. That's one place they never look. They slipped through the sand as the first searchlights swept over the relay. Explosions tore through the air behind them, dust clouds rising like ghosts. Rian led her toward the old canyons where the desert met the mountain ridge. A labyrinth of tunnels carved by ancient riverbeds and forgotten wars. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. Hours later, they found refuge in an old bunker carved into the rock. It had once been a forward command post, now a tomb of rusted weapons and shattered consoles. Rian sealed the door and checked the perimeter sensors. "We'll rest here," he said. Lyra looked around, brushing her fingers across a wall covered in faded writing. Human names. Dozens of them. "Were these your kind?" "Yeah," Rian said quietly. "The ones who never made it home." Lyra traced one of the names. "Do you think they hated mine?" He hesitated. "They didn't know you. They just knew the war." "And you?" she asked softly. "Do you hate me?" Rian looked at her, and for a moment, all he saw was the frightened girl he couldn't pull the trigger on. The one who still dreamed in a language his people had forgotten how to speak. "No," he said finally. "I hate what made me think I should." Before she could respond, the bunker lights flickered. His sensors beeped, an incoming ping on an old encrypted band. Mercer again. Rian sighed, tapping into the channel. Mercer's face appeared once more, this time harder, colder. "I gave you a chance, old friend. Commands issued a retrieval order. You're listed as hostile. Effective immediately." Rian felt the weight of it settle in his gut. "And you're leading the team, aren't you?" Mercer didn't deny it. "You're forcing my hand. Don't make me choose between you and my orders." "Then don't," Rian said flatly. "Just stay out of my way." Mercer's jaw tightened. "I can't. You know I can't." Rian leaned closer to the screen. "Then you'd better be ready to fire first." He killed the connection and smashed the transmitter to pieces. The bunker filled with silence again, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind that comes before a storm. Lyra stepped closer, her voice trembling. "What happens now?" Rian looked toward the distant thrum of engines echoing through the canyon. "Now?" He slung his rifle over his shoulder, eyes sharp. "Now they hunt us." Above, the skies shimmered with the reflection of descending ships. The chase had begun. And far behind them, on Mercer's command deck, a single encrypted message flashed across his screen from Central Command. Directive 09-13 activated. Target, Rian Holt. Authorization to terminate. Mercer stared at it for a long time before whispering, "God help me. Rian, what have you done?" The nights had grown colder in the canyon, the kind of cold that clung to the bones and made silence feel alive. Rian had stopped counting the days since they'd gone underground. His injuries had healed into scars, but the tension never left his muscles. He moved like a predator that knew it was being hunted, every noise a possible signal, every shadow a threat. Lyra, though, had changed. The longer she stayed in the dark, the more her mind began to stir with strange images, like half-forgotten dreams bleeding through the cracks of time. She would wake trembling, gasping for air, whispering words she didn't recognize. Sometimes they were in human languages Rian didn't expect her to know. Sometimes she said his name. That morning, as the faint light of dawn seeped through the fissure above the bunker, she sat by a dying campfire, tracing shapes in the ash. "Rian," she said softly, not looking up. "I saw something again." He paused mid-motion, tightening the strap on his rifle. "A dream?" She shook her head. "No, a memory." Rian froze. "Of what?" She looked up, eyes distant, unfocused. "A room, cold white walls. I was small, smaller than now. There were people, humans. They wore armor like yours but spoke softly. One man held my hand. He told me not to be afraid. He said..." She hesitated, voice cracking slightly. "The soldier will protect you." Rian's chest tightened. He sat down across from her, keeping his expression still. "Do you remember his face?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, only his voice. He sounded like he was saying goodbye. Rian leaned back against the wall, staring up at the cracked ceiling. The words hit too close. She wasn't supposed to remember any of that. Whatever her people or his had done to her, they'd buried the truth deep. But memories had a way of surfacing when the heart stopped fearing them. Lyra turned to him suddenly, studying him with quiet intensity. "You know something, don't you?" He hesitated. "You flinch every time I talk about the past," she continued, her tone sharper now. "Every time I ask who I was before the war, you look away. Why?" "Because some truths don't save anyone," he said quietly. She rose, stepping closer. The faint glow beneath her skin pulsed with agitation, illuminating the small chamber in soft, alien light. "You've protected me all this time. From what? From them?" She pointed upward, toward the distant rumble of ships in the sky. "Or from me?" Rian stared at her, and for the first time, the wall between them cracked. "From both," he said. Her breath caught. "I don't understand." He exhaled, slow and tired. "You weren't just some random target, Lyra. You were engineered. You carry something inside you, something neither side fully understood. Humanity wanted to control it. Your people wanted to awaken it. I was sent to kill you before either could succeed." Her voice trembled. "And you didn't. I couldn't." The silence that followed was fragile. Lyra's eyes shimmered, confusion warring with something softer. Recognition? Maybe? Or the ghost of trust. "So all this time," she whispered. "The voice that spoke in the dark, the footsteps I heard at night, it was you." He nodded slowly. She took one step closer. For the first time, he didn't move away. Her hand reached for the edge of his hood, hesitating before pulling it back. The light caught his face. Tired eyes, scarred cheek, and a faint streak of gray at his temples. He looked older than she imagined, harder. But there was a gentleness in his gaze that didn't belong on a soldier. Lyra's throat tightened. "You were the one," she said, voice breaking. "The one my father spoke of." Rian blinked. "Your father?" She nodded faintly, closing her eyes as fragmented voices echoed in her mind. "Trust the soldier. He will keep you safe until it's time." When her eyes opened again, they were wet with tears. "He knew you. He trusted you." Rian's heart clenched. The pieces were falling into place too perfectly. That meant this wasn't coincidence. It was design. Command must have known who she was from the beginning. And if her father was human, no. He pushed the thought away. That kind of revelation would break everything they were barely holding together. But before he could speak, the bunker shook violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and a deep roar rolled through the canyon. Rian grabbed his rifle and sprinted to the viewport slit. His HUD flared red. Multiple heat signatures. Dozens of them. Dropships. Lyra stumbled to his side. "What's happening?" "They found us," he said grimly. "Mercer's team must have traced the last transmission. They're locking onto our energy signature." Another explosion rattled the ground. The wall cracked, sending a beam of light slicing through the room. Rian pulled her toward the exit tunnel. "Move! Now!" Lyra hesitated. "You said they'll kill me. Why?" He turned to her, eyes fierce. "Because you're proof that everything they've fought for is a lie." They ran through the dark tunnels as the sky outside burned crimson. The sound of descending ships filled the air, echoing like thunder across the rocks. Rian's comm pinged once, a secure broadcast. Mercer's voice. "Rian, listen to me. You have one chance to surrender. Don't make me pull the trigger." Rian gritted his teeth. "You already did when you came here." He shut the comm off and led Lyra toward a narrow ravine, where the earth opened into a field of shattered glass and old steel bones, wreckage from a forgotten battle. Behind them, the canyon erupted in fire. The air shimmered with burning fragments of rock and smoke. Lyra turned, watching the inferno consume their last refuge. Her voice broke. "You risked everything for me. Why?" Rian looked at her through the glow of the flames, his face lit in red and gold. "Because 10 years ago, I looked at you and saw the last piece of humanity worth saving. Before she could respond, the ground trembled again. Overhead, the black silhouettes of ships blotted out the stars, their engines screaming as they descended. Rian raised his rifle, scanning the sky. "They're here." Lyra's skin brightened, light spilling through her veins like liquid fire. She didn't know why, but her heart surged with something powerful, something awakening. As the first missile streaked toward them, Rian turned, shielding her with his body. The blast hit the ridge, the shockwave throwing them both into the dust. When the fire cleared, she opened her eyes to see Rian sprawled beside her, blood trickling down his face, his eyes barely open. And far above, in the roaring sky, 100 ships blazed like falling stars, all converging on the same point. Them. Under a burning sky, Rian drags Lyra into the shattered ruins, plasma bolts scorching the air around them. The horizon glows red with incoming human transports, while alien shuttles descend from the opposite ridge, both sides converging on the same target. Lyra trembles, her luminous skin flickering like a dying star. "They're here for me," she whispers, voice small against the chaos. Rian reloads his rifle with shaking hands. "They're not getting you," he says, though he isn't sure if it's a promise or a prayer. The comms in his helmet crackle to life. Mercer's voice cuts through the static, sharp and cold. "Rian Holt, you've been a ghost for 10 years. Time to finish what you started." Rian rips the comm unit from his ear. He knows Mercer won't stop until Lyra is dead. From the opposite ridge, alien ships touch down, and armored figures emerge, ragged survivors of her kind. One of them calls her name, voice trembling with hope. "Lyra of the Core Light, you live?" She steps forward before Rian can stop her, eyes wide, tears gleaming. "They're my people. They'll kill you if the humans don't," Rian growls, pulling her back. "They think you betrayed them, but it's too late." Both sides open fire. Energy beams crisscross the valley, cutting through smoke and dust. Rian shoves Lyra behind a collapsed wall, then leans out, firing burst after burst into the advancing human line. His HUD flashes red, ammo low. He looks over to see Lyra kneeling in the dirt, hands pressed to the ground. The earth begins to pulse with light. "Lyra, what are you doing?" he shouts. "Ending this," she says. Vines of shimmering energy erupt from the ground, coiling through the ruins, disabling weapons and melting armor. For a moment, the battlefield goes silent, both armies frozen in awe. Then Mercer appears through the haze, rifle aimed squarely at Rian's chest. "You should have killed her when you had the chance." His voice carries the weight of all those years, all those orders Rian disobeyed. Rian lowers his weapon slowly, meeting Mercer's eyes. "Maybe she's what makes us human." Mercer hesitates, finger trembling on the trigger. But command orders scream through his headset. "Eliminate the alien and her protector." Rian sees it in Mercer's eyes. The decision is made. A gunshot echoes. Lyra screams. Dust rises around them as Rian falls to one knee, clutching his chest. Mercer's expression twists. Not victory, not relief, just horror. Because behind him, the alien soldiers open fire. The world explodes in light. When the dust clears, Lyra crawls toward Rian, his blood bright against her glowing hands. He tries to speak, voice breaking. "Don't let them have it." She leans close, her tears falling onto his armor. "I can't do this without you." His hand brushes her face, then drops. The alien soldiers close in, weapons ready. But Lyra stands, eyes burning like twin suns. "You already did," she whispers to his still form. She turns toward the human command ships descending through the storm, energy surging through her veins. The ground trembles, the air vibrates, and somewhere far above, satellites begin to fail as her pulse spreads across the planet. Both armies look up as the sky itself seems to breathe. The last thing they hear before everything goes silent is Rian's final transmission, playing through every comm on both sides. "Protect her, even from yourselves." Rian's breaths came in ragged, measured pulls as he climbed the narrow path that cut through the blackened ribs of the mountain. The canyon behind them was a smear of smoke and dying light, a battlefield reduced to choked fires and twisted metal, and ahead the ridge rose like a promise written in stone. He moved with the fevered determination of a man who knew every second stolen from him was counted in another's ledger. Every footfall carried the memory of the valley's blood and the weight of the orders he had abandoned. Lyra was slung against his chest in the crook of his good arm, lighter than he expected, her head tucked against his shoulder. Her breath was hot, shallow, and every time she shifted he felt the faint, impossible glow beneath her skin, a pulse that sounded like a second, softer heart. Blood had matted strands of his hair to his forehead. His side ached where Mercer's bullet had found purchase. He told himself the pain was a small price for the life in his arms, and for a long time that thought kept him moving. They reached the saddle just as the sky began to bruise, distant engines returning, the harsh geometry of human searchlights corroded by the storm clouds. The relay tower crouched there like a sentinel, ancient, hollowed, and still humming with the residual memory of someone else's war. Its antennae were long dead and rusted, but its core housed the old biological lattices, databanks that once cataloged genomes, immune signatures, and pathogen blueprints. In another age, scientists had used that tower to preserve species, to catalog everything they feared might be lost. In this, it was precisely the thing the war had been fought over. If the tower's cores were detonated at the right frequency and with the right charge, the electromagnetic surge would fry, not just the hardware but the compiled biological signatures stored within the lattices. It would erase the encoded patterns both sides sought to weaponize, a reset that would cost Lyra whatever unique imprint she carried. It would be mercy in the harshest sense. Death by design for a future that wouldn't be stolen by either species. Rian set the packs down and began unloading. He worked with the mechanical calm of the trained and desperate, checking detonators, aligning charge matrices, humming the old cadence of arming protocols his fingers remembered better than his tongue. Lyra watched him, eyes wide in the stuttering light, and for a long moment she said nothing. The mountain wind teased threads of hair free from her cloak, and her glow pulsed like a slow tide. "You don't have to do this," she whispered finally, voice thin as paper. "There must be another way." He glanced at her, and something small and human untied inside his chest. He had imagined this conversation 100 times in the long nights since he'd first lied to command. He had rehearsed what mercy would sound like, how you tell someone the only road to safety is destruction of their own name. None of those rehearsals had a voice like hers, soft, incredulous, threaded with a hope that had no business surviving in the ruins. "There's no other way that gives them a choice," he answered. "If you carry what they want, they'll always come. People will always make tools of what they don't understand. I can blow the core and stop the chase. I can buy the world sometime to choose different things." Lyra's fingers found his wrist and tightened. "Time?" she repeated, as if the word tasted foreign. "What is time to them? They would destroy you and take me. They would study me until everything that makes me me is gone." Her hand trembled, and the glow under her skin brightened. Small flares of light like fireflies startled into flight. "You think I don't know what they do when they dissect hope? My father told me once, 'Trust the soldier,' he had said. He said soldiers kept promises. Is this the promise?" Rian's throat closed around the ache of a memory he'd kept for himself. A white room and a man with gentle hands telling a child to hide her voice and count the stars. The flash of that memory had been a small rebellion inside him for years. It was the hinge that had loosened him from orders. He let out a sound that might have been a laugh, thick and unfunny. "It's the only promise I can keep that doesn't end with you in a lab with a clamp around your wrist." She searched his face as though measuring the truth of what he said. "You always thought of this as the only way?" she asked. "To be a soldier who kills instead of being a savior?" "No," he said. "I wanted to be something else once. I thought command meant justice. Then I saw the ledger of it." He reached for her, and she leaned into him, forehead resting on his chest where she could feel his heartbeat and not the hum beneath her own skin. "I've given them a lie for 10 years, Lyra. I can't give them another lie that costs what you are." There was a long, fragile silence, full of the brittle sound the mountain wind made when it moved through broken metal. Far below in the valley the war had not slept. He could hear the distant percussive thud of ordnance, the high keening of search drones. The timer on the charges blinked a dispassionate red at his feet. He could set the delay and give Lyra time to run. No, he could give her time to live, but not without losing the essence of what she was. He thought of the children he'd seen in refugee columns, of men who traded promises like currency, of the scientist who had once told him on a transport vessel that knowledge without wisdom was a calamity. The calculus of it had always been cruel. Now, it sat in his hands as components and wires and a single, irreversible choice. "Is it really only the code?" Lyra asked, voice barely audible. "If you break it, if you make sure no one can rebuild me from a file, will that save anyone? Or will it just make them angrier?" Rian looked at her and felt the ache of a man who had known too many answers were ugly. "Maybe it makes them angrier," he admitted. "Maybe it forces them to face what they are without new toys to justify it. Maybe it starves the war for its fresh blood. Or maybe it doesn't. But at least it gives you a chance to live as a person and not as a prize." She wiped at her cheek with the back of her hand, leaving a faint smear of dust across her luminous skin. "You always say the right things when it counts," she murmured. "Do you always mean them?" He smiled then, a small, tired thing. "I mean this." He reached for the arming key, feeling the cold bite of metal. The relay tower thrummed beneath their feet like an animal awakening. The old databanks ticked in their slow mechanical breaths, keeping the records of dead things like a tomb. He slid the key into the slot, and the indicator shifted from amber to steady green. The timer began its slow count. "Rian," Lyra said suddenly, voice sharp with a new kind of fear. "What about Mercer? If he finds out, he will not stop." The name landed like an extra weight on his shoulders. Rian's jaw tightened. Mercer had been the instrument of the hunt. The man who had once been his brother under fire had become the face of the law he had abandoned. "Then we make sure he never reaches this ridge," he said. "We slow them down. We misdirect them. We use every trick I have left." Lyra's eyes searched his face, searching for the lie of a man trying to make himself heroic. "You said once, when I was small, that you would keep me until it was time," she whispered, the memory like a salve. "Was that the plan? Or did you always know the ending?" He paused. There had been no plan at the beginning, only a refusal to fire and a sudden certainty that he could not be the soldier who made the choice for her. But now, at the end of a path of his own making, certainty had hardened into resolve. "I always knew there would be an ending," he said. "I just didn't know who would be left to read it." She put a hand over his, and for a moment the mountain shrank to the size of that contact. Fragile, earnest, human. Below, the valley's conflict swelled, a wave cresting, and Rian's ears filled with the metallic song of incoming flight. On his HUD, a cluster of signatures blinked on the horizon, small, fast, and too numerous. Mercer's call sign flashed like a warning. Time compressed into a narrow braid. Lyra's grip tightened. "If you do this," she said, voice raw, "will you stay with me? Until the end?" His answer was simple and honest, true in a way commands and doctrine had never taught him to be. "Every second I have." He pressed the arming sequencer. The charges locked into a countdown he could not reverse. He should have felt triumph or relief, but what moved through him then was a fragile, terrible tenderness, the kind that arrives only when a man accepts that some things are worth losing all for. He shouldered his rifle, checking the perimeter even as the minutes bled away. Somewhere above, a shadow carved the sky, and the hiss of a dropship's entry tuned to the same note as his heartbeat. The first human signal pinged the ridge, too close, too fast. Mercer's voice came through, crisp and inevitable. "Halt, stand down. This is your last warning." Rian looked at Lyra, at the pale glow that had been the cause of wars and the fragile reason for his treason. He thought of the soldier his father had named in a whisper, of the boy who once believed in medals, of the man he had become for her. He drew a breath that tasted of metal and smoke and the salt of old regrets. "Then remember this," he said, voice steady. "If they won't learn mercy, teach them the cost." Behind the voice of the command he had deserted, The mountain seemed to exhale. The timer ticked toward 0, merciless, implacable. Rian shouldered Lyra, eyes fast toward the horizon, and for the first time in years he felt very small and very large at once. An ember in a world that had all but stopped noticing what peace looked like. The cliff of possibility split open beneath them as a rotor blade knifed the air and the first figure dropped from shadow. Mercer, landing with the predator's grace of a man who had chosen laws over friendship. In the second before the two men saw each other fully, Rian's hand tightened on the detonator green key. The world narrowed to a decision between what the future might demand and what mercy now required. The mountain held its breath with him. The camera's red light blinked to life in the half-dark of the mountain relay room, flickering off broken glass and scarred metal. Rian sat in front of it, shoulders squared but trembling slightly from blood loss, his uniform torn and burned. A strip of gauze wrapped hastily around his ribs, already soaked through. The detonator rested beside him on the console, armed, waiting. Behind him, the great core of the relay hummed with energy, lights running like veins through its surface. It looked alive, breathing in quiet pulses of gold and blue. Lyra stood a few steps away, silent, her silver eyes reflecting both him and the machine like twin mirrors of uncertainty. She didn't move. She didn't need to. Every motion now felt sacred. Final. Rian inhaled slowly, and when he spoke, his voice came steady but quiet, weighted with exhaustion and something deeper. "If you're watching this," he began, "it means I didn't make it out. Maybe none of us did. Maybe that's the point." He stopped, swallowed, and lifted his gaze toward the lens. His expression softened, the hardened soldier's mask cracking just enough to show the man beneath. "My name is Commander Rian Holt, United Human Forces, serial number 14708. 10 years ago, I was sent across enemy lines with a single order: eliminate the last surviving heir of the Aranai species. She was said to carry a genetic code that could unmake us. That's what they told me. What they didn't tell me," he looked down, then back up, "was that she was just a girl." Lyra closed her eyes, and he could hear the small, uneven sound of her breathing in the quiet. He didn't turn toward her, but his tone changed, softening again, shaped by the memory he couldn't unsee. "I found her in the ruins of a temple. She wasn't armed. She wasn't dangerous. Just a child clutching the ashes of her world. And when she saw me, when she saw the rifle, she didn't scream. She didn't run. She just said one word: please." He paused, his throat tight, his eyes burning under the sting of regret. "That word broke something in me, or maybe it fixed something. I don't know anymore, but I couldn't pull the trigger." He exhaled, slow and heavy, letting the silence fill the cracks between his words. Outside, the mountain wind howled through shattered windows, carrying with it the low growl of engines drawing closer, human strike teams closing in from below. "For 10 years, he continued, voice steadying again, "I hid her, protected her. I told command she was dead. I watched her grow from a frightened child into something extraordinary. She learned about us, humans, from broken archives and old broadcasts. She learned what mercy meant from stories, not from people. And I realized the truth we all forgot. We don't protect what we hate. We protect what reminds us who we are." He leaned closer to the camera, his face filling the frame now. Sweat dripped from his temple. "You, the ones watching, whoever you are, human or Aranai, you need to understand something. We've been killing each other over survival for so long that we forgot the difference between surviving and living. We call it victory when there's no one left to bury the dead. We call it peace when the silence is too thick to breathe. But that's not peace. That's extinction with good marketing." His lips twitched with a ghost of a smile. "We can do better. We have to." The relay tower hummed louder, light rippling through its coils. Lyra moved closer, watching him as if memorizing his every word. Her voice trembled. "Rian, they're coming. You have to finish." He nodded slightly but didn't stop speaking. "The code she carries, it's not a weapon. It's life. It's the blueprint for repairing ecosystems we burned. It's the chance for both our species to rebuild what we lost. And that's why both sides want it so badly, because it's the one thing that can make them admit they were wrong. He looked down for a moment, fingers brushing the console's cold surface. Then he raised his eyes again, and the soldier's tone returned, tempered by compassion. To my commanders, if this message reaches human high command, you told me once that compassion is weakness. That mercy costs victory. You were wrong. Compassion is the only reason we deserve victory at all. Without it, we're just the same monsters we swore to destroy. His gaze shifted slightly, as if he could see beyond the camera, to the horizon where alien survivors might one day hear his voice. And to the Aranai who find this message, I can't ask for forgiveness. We burned your worlds and called it progress. We studied your dead and called it science. I don't have excuses, but maybe I can give you something else. The truth. Your people taught us what light looks like when it's alive. Don't let our shadows swallow that. He hesitated, then glanced toward Lyra. And to you? His voice softened again, barely above a whisper. If you ever see this, I hope you understand why I did what I did. You taught me what mercy feels like again. You made me remember that orders are just words until someone decides to make them human. Stay alive, Lyra. Stay curious. Remember why I broke the rules. Lyra's eyes shimmered, the soft luminescence spilling tears that glowed faintly as they fell. She tried to speak, but he raised a hand gently, stopping her. No, he said quietly. Don't say anything yet. Save it for when it matters. He reached out and pressed the console's transmitter. The message began uploading, sending encrypted bursts through the relay's ancient comm net. The signal climbed the atmosphere like a flare, a confession written in code, destined to outlast the both of them. Then the ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, the thrum of ships grew deafening. He grabbed the detonator and stood, his silhouette framed against the flickering blue of the relay core. The camera kept rolling, capturing his every movement in that narrow window of fate. Lyra stood behind him, trembling but resolute. Through the comm link came Mercer's voice, sharp and cold. Reinhold, stand down. You're outnumbered and bleeding out. Don't make this harder than it already is. Rian exhaled slowly, his smile faint but sincere. He looked back toward the camera one last time. They'll call me a traitor. Maybe I am. But if betrayal is what it takes to remind us what mercy looks like, then maybe that's the price of being human. He reached forward and tapped the console, cutting the transmission, his voice lingering in the static. Remember the light. Lyra stepped forward, her hands shaking. Rian, the signal it sent. Everyone will hear it. He nodded once, his eyes on the doorway where shadows moved in the growing smoke. Good, he murmured. Then it's time they learned what comes after silence. Outside, the mountain's wind howled again, this time joined by the thunder of descending ships. The world narrowed to two figures in the dim light, one human, one alien, standing before the storm they had created together. And in that charged, fragile moment, as footsteps echoed nearer, Rian turned to Lyra, his lips curving into that same faint smile. Stay alive, he whispered. Remember why I broke the rules. Then the door exploded inward.